Hey, hi and welcome. All right. Looking nice out there. Okay, I got a quick video. I'm going to try to keep it quick. And this question is basically something that have experienced. Okay. First off, we got to say hi to my dog. Hey, my girl, eating a hot dog. I'm going to pet you. Hey, your highness, your royalty. That's your liking. May I carry on with my day now? There we go. You got to pay that dog tax. Classic bikes. Okay, so you want to buy a classic bike. Now, is it better to buy a fixer-upper for a little bit cheaper, or buy something fully restored? Now, there's two ways to look at this, price-wise. The first thing is, let's look at my bike here. This bike, okay, is obviously not a classic bike, but it's 15 years old. No problem. I buy a bike like this and ride the crap out of it. I mean, I've already got 8,000 kilometers, probably closer to 9 now, since I bought it last year, and 2,500 to 3,000 of them are already from this year. No problem, okay? But this is not a classic bike. So I got that bike for pretty cheap. Now, 10 years down the road from now, if this bike's all beat up and whatever, but it's all there, somebody might buy this bike for, a decent price. And then they're going to want to put it back to period correct, okay? And then they're going to start pricing out a new fairing, because that fairing's painted up, whatever. Or maybe, that fairing, they'll have it repainted. So they'll price that out. Okay, so there's two bikes, okay? There's a bike there, and this is how it works, okay? Those bikes right now are going for what they are, they're going for a song and a prayer. I got that one. It was originally $3,500. I got it for $29. Safetied, new chains, sprockets, tires, oil change, all fluids changed, tuned up, ready to go, right from the dealership. As it was a trade-in. Okay, so if I turned around and sold that bike today, I'd probably get $3,000 for it. But I know in about a decade I'll get $6,000 for it. In worse condition, well, not worse, but running condition. It's all there. It's a little banged up, what have you. Okay, fair enough. It's maybe. Well, it's all there. It's probably 95. The only thing that's really aftermarket on there is the signal lights. That's it. So it's pretty much a stock bike, except for the signal lights and the fact that the paint job is not. I even have the other muffler downstairs, the chrome one. That's still a Triumph muffler, so it's the upgraded one. And it's a good sounding exhaust too. But the thing is that bike, a few years later, you don't know what the collectability is going to be for it. This is also, you see this with classic cars and stuff like that, where, the old Honda Civic, that you used to be able to buy for $500, running tip-top shape is now $5,000 in mid-condition, right? Or $10,000 or $15,000 or an MR2. You used to be able to buy an MR2 for like $1,000, Used why? Because they didn't hold any value, but then because they were so cheap, everybody bought them, and then they just gained value that way, just because it's like now everybody wants them, because that was the cheap car that was good, and people did a lot of testing on them and whatever. Well, bikes are the same thing. For example, I'm going to bring up my old R60 BMW again. I talked about it in my last video. That bike I bought for $1,900. The guy was originally asking $2,500. A mint condition one was probably $25,000 to $3,000. If you could probably find them. This is back in the 90s, okay? And I got it for $1,900, and I turned around and I sold it for $1,100, plus I got another bike. So we'll say I got $1,600 value back. the Yamaha SR 500 that I got for it. I don't know if I got my money's worth of that thing. It was a fun bike, but man, it was evil. It was just so evil. It was always trying to kill me. But that same bike today, mint condition, is going to be that 1972 R60/5 BMW. Today, had I hung on to it, even in the condition it was, I probably would get $4,000 for it not running. And I see them in roughly slightly better condition than what mine was, 5 to 6. And in mint condition, they're anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000. I don't know if people would get that for them, but somebody looking for that specific bike, yeah, they're going to get, because you always ask more than what you want. So if you want $10,000, you ask 12, right? That type of thing, and you haggle with the guy. Like I say, with my R60, the guy was asking 25, and I got him down to 19. So, yeah. That said, what would it have taken to take my BMW right back to mint condition, showroom condition, turn it into a show bike? It probably would have cost me about $500 to $800. Clean up. This is back in the 90s. Now it would cost me probably, in the condition that bike was, it probably would have cost me about $2,000 to $3,000. Paint it, polish it, replace all the leaky seals, things like that. Buy straighter handlebars for it. Yeah. But the bars that were on it were the upgraded bars too, the sportier bars. So they weren't just your regular buckhorns. They were really cool looking bars. I haven't seen bars like that on a bike. But yeah, to get it all 100% original wouldn't have taken that much, and it would have maximized my resale value. But this bike was definitely a well-ridden bike, and especially after I had it, which, it had a little bit of, a lot of dents and bangs in it. It was definitely a bike that looked like it had been ridden, So there was always that. There was always that. My 1948 Harley Davidson Panhead, that bike, I've seen an update on it. It's got my friend bought it from me, and he posts pictures of it every now and then. He's had it for over a decade now, and I don't know if it's ever going to go back on the road, but he's trying to turn it into a little chopper, whatever. I bought the bike, for example, I bought the bike for $6,500, and then, with the loan and everything, it came out to $8,200. Then I put $45, I think, into the engine rebuild, and then I forget what I did for the frame. But when I started adding up all my receipts of all the parts I bought for it and keeping it running and all the maintenance stuff, replace this, replace that, I spent a lot of money on that bike, more than I'll admit. Where if I would have probably bought a bike for the price that I put into it, right from the get-go, for probably half, well, maybe about 2/3 of that price, I probably could have had a completely mint condition, fully restored 48 Panhead. This is back in the 90s prices, not modern day prices now. Now those bikes are completely unobtainable for guys like me now. Fully restored, period correct, is very, very expensive. So, brings us back. I'll use a bike that I seen there about 2 weeks ago at the bike show. That was for sale. Was a late 60s, early 70s, I think it was a 72, might have been a 72 Triumph Tiger. All original. And pretty much all there. Even had some of the touring, like it had the period correct windscreen, it had the period correct, saddlebags, that type of stuff. Original paint, so it was dull. It wasn't showroom condition. The engine, it was definitely a very weathered bike, but all there. The exhaust, same thing. It's all there. It's original exhaust, but it's weathered. And by original, I mean original from that year, not aftermarket OEM replacement from that year. Not a show bike in the sense of clean. So clean, like there was no grease and oil on this bike. It was just weathered. It was just dirty, or just worn. Worn is the better term. Now that bike, the guys got it up for sale for $6,500. Now there was another bike for $9,500. Probably a little bit less complete, but showroom condition, meaning clean paint, beautiful exhaust on it, engine's been detailed. Very, very, very good looking machine. Would need very little to make it 100% period, meaning like, for example, maybe the guy had the original carb and stuff like that, but you know, it's had like a 12 volt upgrade from 6 volt. It, you know, put on a Mikuni carb instead of the ML carbs or whatever on this other Triumph Tiger, and it was basically something that you could use almost as a daily rider, or as a daily rider. But mind you, you start beating up a bike like that as a daily rider, it's like, yeah, I don't know. They become too valuable to ride at some point. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. You know. So maybe it just becomes a fair weather ride. Who knows? But the thing is that the bike itself, for the extra $3,000, if you looked at the other one, which was a little more complete in one way, it would cost you more to take that bike. It cost you more than $3,000 to take that bike into the condition of the other bike for the extra $3,000. So that's something. The saying I use is, don't spend $100. You know, like there's a lot of guys that'll spend $100 to save 10. You'll understand what I'm talking about once you get into restoring a bike or whatever. And I remember guys told me this too when I bought my Panhead. They're like, Reg, well, what do you want to do with this Panhead? I said, well, I don't know. I like having a chopper. I really do. But maybe I'll restore it to full basket. I said, well, or full, you know, period correct. I said, well, don't bother buying it then. I said, why? I said, buy it as close to what you want, because if it looks like this and you want that, by the time you go from this to that, you'll have another bike sitting right beside it. You'll have replaced so many things. It's cheaper in the long run to buy something as close to what you want, is, you know, common sense. But a lot of guys don't look at that. They look at the dollars and cents, you know, at the initial price rather than what they're going to put into it to change it to something that it's, you know, something completely different. And you get this a lot with Harleys, because the Harleys, they're so heavily modified from, you know, you find like my Panhead, for example, it had a 54 front head and a 51 rear head. Who knows what year the jugs were on it. It was 48 cases. Who knows what the crank was, who knows what the, you know, all the other stuff was. You know, one pin and block was from the 60s, the other one was the late 50s, you know, like a 58 in there. Because they did have stamp plates on some of for the years for some of the stuff, right? I think my rockers were different also. All four of them were different different years. The bike was a swap meet special, so to put it period correct, you know, like, well, what year do you pick? You know, so it's titled as a 48, but what is it? The transmission had some 70s parts on it, had some 40s parts on it. It was all over the map. You know, it was sitting in a 76 frame that was turned into a rigid. It had a 49 front end on it. So it was a good looking bike, good looking little bike. But it was never going to be 100% Restro. Now, you can do Restro mods and stuff like that, where it's kind of period correct, but kind of not, you know. A lot of people do this just so they can keep it running. You see it a lot with old cars. It's like, okay, they found like an old, I don't know, a 34 Ford Coupe or whatever, like the ZZ Top type car. And they put a modern LS in it or something, I don't know. There's just something that is like, okay, well, the old end, it would cost like $100,000 just to turn it back to original. So rather than that, we'll hot rod it, because we can get this part out of the swap meet. We can get this, you know, and swap meet specials can be fun. But I don't like it when somebody buys a bike that's almost all original, and then we're going to now chop this up and do that. You know, there's enough bikes out there that you could pick from. For example, there was a set of Norton cases there, and stuff like that. I should have got the guy's number or whatever. But I'm like, okay, I don't want that much of a rebuild. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't mind if it's all there, and then, okay, well, the heads, the jugs, the cases there, and the cranks there, and all the pinions and stuff like that. Okay, fine. You can work with something like that, but when you're starting with just cases, everything else is going to be new. You're looking at an $8,000 motor, right? By the time you get all the parts. If you can get all the parts, you know. You might have to have some stuff machined for you. So you have to factor that. The more rare it is, the and the more original it is, the more it's going to cost. But the condition, a lot of the bikes that are in prestige conditions aren't 100% original because they're period correct or whatever. That's good enough. But the exhaust is brand new. It's like, it was made, it's not made out of the exact same way the old one was made. It's just the same design. The old one was probably, the original stuff was probably never as prestige. Like a lot of bikes, for example, if you have a 48 panhead and it's got chrome on it, I'll use that as an example. Well, they didn't have chrome on the 48 pans. I had the original aluminum rocker covers on there. People were walking up to me, Reg, I'll trade you these brand new Arlen Ness or whatever pan covers. Oh, look at them. They're all chrome and shiny. You like that on your bike, right? I said, no way. I got the aluminum covers on there. Yeah, but it's not really 100% period. I said, I know. But I like those are the original. I even had the aluminum D-rings on it. And it was like, okay, now people are like, okay, they want to cannibalize my bike because I have unobtainium on my bike, these little parts. So they'll buy me. You want brand new chrome ones? I'll buy you the brand new chrome ones. I said the only ones I would trade for is the later stainless steel ones over the aluminum ones. But my aluminum ones were in perfect condition, like they were mint condition. And when I polished them up, man, did they ever look good. And people would see other panheads with chrome. The chrome looked good. The chrome looked better. But they would just love the fact that it had the original, even though it was in a bike that was nowhere near original. But that said, to bring it back to 100% original, I mean, you can buy right now a 48 panhead with not one single Harley part on it whatsoever. A complete restoration, OEM parts. They make every part for this bike. Every part you could possibly, because they're popular enough of a classic bike. Even though Harley only produced like 10,000 of them, 9,000 of them. They didn't make that many. Like Harleys really didn't make that many bikes per year, even up until the early 2000s. They were making less than 100,000 bikes a year. Now it's like probably the number one selling bike. I don't know in North America, but I know they have a lot of their problems too, and the manufacturing problems and stuff like that. So they're not selling as much. But that's the thing. The prices on Harleys have dropped down like a rock. Even it's kind of funny because I remember when shovel heads used to be dirt cheap. Well, maybe not dirt cheap, but they're the bike that nobody wanted. It's like they wanted pan heads, they wanted knuckle heads, even flat heads. Or they wanted, a brand new Eagle. The shovel head nobody wanted. Now shovel heads are going up in price. Why? Because they become more rare. There's less of them on the road. So now it's really cool to have a shovel head because it's like, oh, well, you just can't get them anymore. So the prices went up. Pan heads, prices are through the roof. Knuckle heads, good luck. Good luck. And if it's all original, whatever. Triumphs, the same thing. These old Triumphs, I found a running, I don't even know if it would be running, what I'd call a running basket case for $3,800. This bike was obviously had been down, and it was just completely deteriorated. And in that condition, it was $3,800. So it's like, okay, well, you could probably find, but it was all there. It was all there. But the thing is all there is not even. You got to even look beyond that, and I'll tell you why. Because it might be all there, but if the front end's twisted up because the bike's been crashed, or the parts are so deteriorated that it doesn't matter anyway. Well, you got to replace all those parts. So you start running a tally of the parts you're going to have to replace to put it to restore it. Well, then suddenly that bike is you're going to spend like I say, you bought that bike for $9,500 instead of $6,500. Now by the time you've got it to the condition of the not even quite the condition of the bike at $9,500, you spent $18,000. You spent double because you've replaced so many things, or have so many things to replace. So you have to kind of weigh it in like that. That's probably why that bike, that Triumph Tiger at $6,500. That's probably what happened. The guy probably bought it for $2,000 or $1,500, and way back in the day. I think that bike, I had seen it years ago, because there's not that many of them out there, so you kind of remember. I remember a bike just like that, and I remember it was sitting at Cycle Salvage, and I had offered to buy it, and the guy's, no, it's a customer. Felix was like, no, it's a customer's. And sure enough, I was like, it's like, I said, well, if the guy ever goes to sell it, let me know, right? And obviously, I guess he never did. But he probably never had the money to turn it into a complete restoration. So it's like, okay, well, you can restore it, but then there's another thing, and this is going to sound funny. Like I say, that like 36 knuckles sitting, I have it in the book where it's like it's never been restored. There's a value because it's all original. But then that's a museum piece, right? So if we're talking a daily runner, retro mod might be the best way to go. So maybe you find a bike that's not too bad, and over time you're going to keep the bike. You're not thinking about resale value. And then it doesn't matter. You'll just keep putting money into it over time, and it'll turn into whatever you want it to turn into. But these are just things to consider if you're getting into classic motorcycles. I know I can go on forever on this topic, but it's the same thing with classic cars or anything like that. They are money pits to a degree. If you're talking daily rider, I'm more of a daily rider type of guy. So I'd like to have a classic bike that, okay, if it's not 100% perfect, I'm okay with that. Because any bike I buy, I'm buying it with the concept of putting 8 gazillion miles on it. I want 75 miles to the gallon to 80 miles to the gallon. I don't care, and I never want it to break down, and I want to rely on it. So I'm more willing to buy a bike that's maybe 75 to 80% complete, or retro modded, where, okay, it doesn't have the original carburetors on there, but this bike's never going to go really into a bike show, a serious bike show. But you're going to see me rolling down the highway while I'm rolling down the highway on it. You're just going to be astounded to see that bike there. You're not going to care if every little detail is not 100% correct. So that's what I would be more looking for, and I could save money that way, and you still get the experience, you still get the all that good stuff. The other option is buying modern classics. This is why, and Triumph, I think, and Norton has done this well. The one thing is with the new Nortons is there's nothing out there. There's no owner reviews on these things at all. Like you'll see the startups and oh, hey, I test drive it. But no, I want to know about the guy who's put like 15,000 miles on the new Norton Commando 961 engine. How did it hold up? How many times did you have to take it back to the shop? Is it is it as good as advertised? Or is it a complete lemon? Is it just a novelty, or is it a daily rider? I want to know those things, right? Most people do. The Triumph Thruxton. I mean, if there was a bike I was going to buy new, it's Triumph Thruxton. I mean, my God, they're gorgeous. Pick a year, any year, whether it's the 900 or the 1200. The 1200 I'd love to have, sure. That's the proper hooligan bike right there. The Triumph Street Cup. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. The Bobber, it's a good-looking bike, but the Bobber, it kind of loses the lines of the the classic Triumph, like the other ones, like the Bonnevilles and the Street Twins and stuff like that. But I found a 2000 Bonneville 750, I think it was. Looked, I mean, when you're riding, I remember when I first started seeing these Triumphs riding around the street, I thought they were all old bikes. Everybody, oh, what year? Like it's brand new. And what? So Triumph did a really good job of disguising that. So the retro bike, it's not the same as riding an overhead cam bike with fuel injection and electronic ignition and all that. Points-driven bikes don't ride the same. They don't accelerate the same. No, they're not as fast, but they're lively. They are lively. They vibrate a lot more. I love old bikes. Old bikes are just awesome to ride. And I've ridden my fair share of old bikes, too. I've never gotten to ride in Norton. I have ridden old Sportsters. Sportsters. Used to be able to get them for like $2,500. Old Ironheads. Why? Sportsters are a good bike to look at for price-wise. But the old Ironheads, man, you have to be part mechanic, part guru, part voodoo, part necromancer to keep those things running. I mean, they are very hard. An Ironhead is a mechanic's, I wouldn't say a mechanic's nightmare, but a mechanic's, it's a thinking man's bike. You just cannot keep these things running for very long without something going on them. They were notoriously unreliable. Yet there's guys riding around on 57 sports Ironheads, and they run like a charm because they know every little trick on the bike. And that's what a lot of these old bikes come down to, is the tricks to keeping them running. Not so much that you have to keep replacing parts all the time. It's that, oh no, this is just, this little thing went out of time. And these old bikes are like that. They can be finicky, right? So even some new bikes are finicky. I mean, if you buy a Ducati anything, you know, how long do you expect it to last? I mean, I'd love to have a Ducati 916 or a 748. I think they're just gorgeous. But you know, it's not a bike that you'd want to rely on as a daily rider. You know, Norton Commando. Again, I'd love to have one, but I know they're going to be high maintenance. You know, the Nortons were never known. They were known as fast bikes of their day, but they were never known for high top end reliability. They were known for British reliability, which was different. It was different. But it wasn't because they would have catastrophic failure. It's just they were finicky. They were old bikes, they were finicky. You know, you get one carb working great, the other one wouldn't. If you had a twin carb, right? It took a little bit to synchronize them. Sometimes you just couldn't synchronize them. There was all kinds of little things like that. Push rod adjustments, oil pump, you know, stuff. Yeah, you can get that. The Harleys, they're easy to get going, pretty reliable once you get the bugs out of them. But it's what did the previous owner do to them? That's usually the problem with Harleys. Why they'd be sitting on the side of the road is under exhaust and overcarbed is probably, you know, and then a cooked valve or whatever. That was what gave Harleys a bad name. It wasn't that Harley wasn't building reliable bikes. No, the older bikes from the 40s and the 50s, they were reliable enough. If you left them stock. That's when people start hot rodding them and running the carb with no fuel no air filter on them, and then sucking in all that dirt, and then all of a sudden it cost you a top end. And a lot of these old bikes, the top ends only lasted maybe 5,000 miles, 10,000 miles, and then you had to rebuild them. But it was cheap to do it back then. I mean, you bought pistons for $2 and the machine, you could rebuild the top end for $150. So people didn't care, you know, they didn't care back then. Maybe a little more than that. But a lot of guys did it themselves anyway. So rebuilding parts was something that comes with the territory of older vehicles. And that's something you got to consider as well. So retro mod versus full restoration, these are things that you're going to, like for example, if I was running a panhead today, first thing, the only real modification you want to do, okay, number one, make sure you have good exhaust on there, no drag pipes. Drag pipes are, I'm no fan of drag pipes. If they're long enough, you get away with it. But, you know, they're annoying anyway. But you know, like you run the 2 and the 1 exhaust on the old panheads like they had, the bike will, you know, will have proper compression, and just put a better carburetor on it. And, you know, you save yourself so many headaches. Same with the Triumphs. Like every guy I've ever rode with that had a Triumph, you know, they all put Makunis on there because it was, or Keans or whatever they get an adapter for it, just to keep the bike running. It was, the carburetors were hard to get reliable carburetors back in the day. So if you wanted to ride the bike any mileage, that was one of the things. My old BMW had Bing carburetors. They were reliable, but they were finicky. You were constantly adjusting them. Even though the bike would run well all the time, it just, you know, you'd have to, you know, the weather would change, you'd have to richen it up or lean it out, you know, from time to time. If it was a really hot day, the bike would run a bit like a dog's breakfast. It would just run a little bit rougher. And so you'd have to sit there, you'd drive around with a screwdriver. It was reliable, it was finicky, you know. And other guys would upgrade to the Makunis and they'd never have to touch them again, you know. They adjust them in the spring, maybe midsummer, and then they were good for the rest of the season. Fuel injection comes along, you don't have to worry about any of that, so to speak. I don't know, early fuel injection, anything like early 90s kind of thing, even up to the early 2000s. Fuel injection, I think fuel injection is just starting. I think 2008 on is, 2007, 2008 is when they finally got it right for motorcycles. Because there's just little finicky things that I find with my bike for the fuel injection that is, you know, it's finicky. You know, it's like it's not unreliable. It's finicky. Why is it doing that? You got to learn to live with it. Well, the carburetors were the same thing. You know, but yeah, you know, so don't spend $100 to save 10. Means if you're looking at a bike and what do you want to do with the bike? Is it just something that you want to putt around on? You don't really care if it's a show bike. For me, yeah, you want the prettiest bike you can possibly run around on. But then once you get it to the point where it's so pretty, you don't want to scratch anything on it. Then it gets, okay, well, I can't ride this thing. It's too nice, you know. So I understand the guys that ride around with a slightly more cruddy bike. My bike, since I bought it, I've never been able to clean it the way it was when I bought it. You know, like that kind of detailing, I just, you know, I don't want to spend all my time detailing and stuff like that. Maybe I'll do it once a season at the end of the season so it's clean for the next season. But, you know, like I got 3 layers of flies on my, you know, on my bike and stuff like that. All my other bikes were the same. Didn't matter what it was. They were ridden. And a lot of people will respect you when they see a bike pull up and it's a little bit more beat up. Maybe it looks good, but it's not doesn't look great. You got yourself an old Tiger or Bonneville, whatever, and you pull up and it's just people want to see it. You know, like, wow, what year, great bike, wow, it looks awesome. And you know yourself, it's not a show bike, okay, the paint's, it's the original paint, but, you know, there's a chip out of it, there's scratches in it, it's dulled, it's a little bit faded here, the decals are a little bit, you know, but it's all there and as clean as it's going to get. You know, but there's gunk around the engine, it's as clean as it's going to get for a rider, a daily ridden bike. But it's the idea that you're out on it and people see it and they're just like, wow, that's the charm. And the more ridden it looks, the more it just invokes nostalgia in people. So that's something to consider too. So maybe you don't have to buy the bike at $9,500. You could buy the one that, okay, the guy's kept it running and he just put the Burnhams and Ridems, kept it all, you know, all tip top there, and it's mechanically sound. Okay, the tires aren't period correct, but they're safer. You know, if you get rain or whatever, you can ride this thing day shine. Okay, it doesn't have points anymore. It has electronic ignition. And you see a lot of guys doing stuff like that where they're retro modded, where, you know, the big parts are still period and stuff like that. But maybe they've, you know, okay, well, the old exhaust looked kind of bit like a dog's breakfast, so they put a, you know, newer pipes on there, whatever. Okay, most people don't mind that. For daily riders, most people don't mind that. I remember when I had one thing I had when I had my R60 BMW slash 5 model. Because I was a Harley guy at the time, and when I went from my LTD 440, which was a great little bike, you know, I've even been kind of looking around to see if there's any of them kicking around. I saw a guy post one. And it invokes nostalgia. It's like, that was the first street bike I had. They're great bikes, 6-speed, 75 miles to the gallon. I swear to God, mine got such good miles. I don't know what the is going to get. But the guy bought it for his daughter or whatever, and it's like, that's a great starter bike. You know, and it gets to the point where it's like, if I ever found another one in mint condition for the right price, yeah, I'd buy it. You know, meanwhile, when I bought it, it was like, I paid $900 for mine with the safety and everything like that, new tires on it. And the only reason why it was $900 is because I bought it from the dealership, and it had new tires on it. The tires were where the bike was a $500 bike. It was the tires and the safety check and the new belt on it or whatever. That's where the money was. You know, like the rest was just and the oil change and all that. So it was like there was like $400 worth of safety, like again, the consumables were all replaced on it. So I was like, okay, well, I could have bought a bike for $500 and put $400 into it, or buy this one for $900, And I bought this bike and I ran the crap out of it. And you bought it because it was a beater bike of the day, but now you look at them and it's like, at the time you're riding it, you're wishing you're riding your dream bike, whatever it was. Maybe it was a Triumph, it was a Harley or an Indian or something like that. I always wanted an Indian 442, and I remember, I've seen a couple of them up close, and they're just, wow, those are cool bikes, But yeah, to keep those things running in mid condition is something, wow. That takes financial commitment. LTD 440, no financial commitment, just put gas in it. I'd fill up for $4. I can't imagine what it'd be like to be able to fill up for that kind of money today. And again, 75 miles. Like I'd run the bike back and forth to work. It was the only vehicle I had, kind of like the way I am now. The only vehicle I have is a motorbike. And I'd run back and forth to work on it. $2. And one day I was just like, I'm going to run this bike out of gas just to see what the mileage was. And I figured I was getting 240, 250 kilometers to the tank. And it was a small little tank on that sucker. Yeah, it was probably 75 miles to the gallon. Probably 60 miles to the gallon in the city. Well, it was probably more than 240 to the tank. Whatever I was getting, it was ridiculous anyway. And yeah, so a bike like that, you would ride it around while you'd see these other guys riding around on Nortons and Triumphs and Indians and Harleys and whatever, and you'd want these Harleys and these stream bikes and stuff like that. But then once you get into those bikes, when I bought the BMW, I still wanted my Harley, but I didn't have the money yet. It was only when that Panhead, my 48 Panhead Sweetie, when she came out up for sale. The first time it came up for sale was 10,500 or 11,000. I can't remember. And I was like, no way I could get that. But when it went down to 6,500, I took out a loan, jumped on it. It was my second loan. The first loan was for the BMW. It was I had to take out, I think, $1,000 plus the cash I had. And at the time, the loans were cheap, so now I wouldn't even think about getting a loan. But it was one of those things that when I was riding around I'd pull the seat off, and I wonder if I could, do this. And everybody would, even the Harley guys, like Reg, I know you want your Harley and stuff like that. You bought the BMW just because it was something different than a Japanese bike. And again, it did become its thing. And I'm glad I never modded it. I'm glad I never, I was talking about putting straight pipes on it. I was in my 20s, right? So, and all the BMW guys, oh, dude, don't. You'll lose so much respect if you because those are the bikes you didn't mod. Now you see everybody doing. They get these old GS 800s or GS 80s and these old R60s, and they turn them into calf racers. And that seems to be acceptable. But back in the 90s, no. If you had an R75 or an R60, you didn't touch it. You kept it as original as possible. The more original it was, the more respect you got. Even amongst people that didn't like BMWs, they were just like, "Oh wow, it's all original," And I'm glad I kind of left it the way it was. But, you're always thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll do this to it or whatever. And you see that this is the problem that happened to, like, the Nortons, the Triumphs, the Indians, the Harleys. So now you can't find an original one out there, right? So when you do find something that's as close as possible to original, like a Vincent Black Shadow or something like that, if you can find these bikes, 85, 95% complete, they tend to hold pretty good value. But again, my 72 BMW, I bought it for $1,900. Had I hung on to it and restored it, it'd be a $10,000 to $12,000 bike today. I've seen them, the prices vary, but like in mint condition, it's a $10,000 bike. You don't know where these things are going to end up, right? I mean, back in the 90s, you could pick up a Triumph. If you could find them, there was all kinds of Triumph Tigers for like $1,500, $2,000, $2,500. Now it's like, again, nobody wants to sell them. And people are buying these old choppers, these Triumph choppers, because you can't ride around with hardtails, rigid frames in Quebec anymore, unless it's like period correct and it's got the sprung seat or whatever. But you can't basically ride with a rigid frame in Quebec anymore. You still can get away with it in Ontario, but yeah. But if it's all original, it was built with the rigid frame, you can get it as a classic bike or whatever. But they all had sprung seats. You couldn't go seat to frame, whatever. So I don't know. I'll have to look into on the laws a bit more on that. But you get the idea of what I'm getting at. So buy it as close to what you want. That way you're not spending $100 just to save 10. So you got a good deal on the bike used, but it was so far off the beaten path as a chopper or whatever, or a calf racer or whatever. If it's just parts that were just removed and you just got to put the parts back on, sometimes you can find used parts or whatever. But most of the time, if things been cut and stretched and raked and replaced with other things, then there's really not much you can do. Now, if you can buy a bike that's rough and it's just cosmetics, cosmetics are easier than mechanics. So it's just a matter of money and time. For the cosmetics, re-chrome the exhaust, redo the, polish the cases, stuff like that. Some of the stuff you can do yourself, repaint the tanks, whatever. Some of the stuff you can do yourself, so that's just my take on it. I try to make this a quick video. I can't make quick videos. Sorry, guys, I just can't. But these are great topics. They're a little bit different from the normal stuff I cover. But I think they're good topics, and it's something that this channel, I want to take it towards getting into more classic bikes than cars. But I want to get into stuff like that, and again, because I've always been into it, and I like tinkering with things too. I've got way too many projects right now. I've got to deal with my boat, and got to get rid of that trailer, and I've got the bike upkeep and stuff like that. So I don't want anything big coming down the pike as far as, here's a big basket case of, a 41 Indian Chief or something like that, 47 Indian Chief or something, which would be cool, but it's going to take me a frickin' 100 years to rebuild it. Now, mind you, I do want a project like that where it's just like, I'm just going to take, this thing isn't going on the road for the next 5, 10 years. Anyway, build my retirement project, turn it into a show bike, whatever. I don't mind getting something like that. But I also want, this is what I want to do, just to give you an idea. First, I got to get another car, because I'm going to need that for the winter coming up anyway. Up here in Canada, motorcycles don't do quite so well in the snow. That's what happened to my LTD 440. Yes, I lost it on the first snowfall in November. I don't ride as hardcore as I used to. I actually haven't had this bike rode at night yet. And I've got over 8,000. Like, it's funny. I just, I take it out for daily rides and whatever. I don't commute anymore because I work from home, right? But what my motorcycle agenda is, and this was what it was before my income got hit by the YouTube algorithms and stuff like that, was to buy the sport bike, get the sport bike thing out of my system, which I'm starting to want a cruiser again. It's like, okay, well, I'm never going to get rid of that bike because I love that little bike. And the other thing is when I get rid of this trailer, and I haven't told my dad I'm doing this yet, but because the garage is so damn full of all it needs is, and I'm in the process of cleaning the garage. It's going to take me like forever, right? And my dad doesn't throw out anything. I mean, we got stuff in there. He doesn't throw out anything, right? And I'm like, okay, if I were to buy a bunch of bikes, where do I put them? So I'm thinking of buying like a storage trailer or a storage shipping container, something like that. And the first thing I'm going to do is buy a 10-gallon pail of Tremclad, okay, right? Or rubber tar, whatever it is. And I'm going to put this thing up on blocks. It's going to be on patio. This is what I should have done with the trailer and the sailboat to begin with, is put down patio stones, okay? And then this thing is going to sit on these blocks or whatever, throughout. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the tar paint and I'm going to tar the crap out of this shipping container. And then inside, what I'm going to have, I'll probably wire it up, is to have either a heater in there or a air conditioning in there, depending on what time of year, what I want to do. The other thing I'm probably going to do is make shelving in it so that I can store a bike on there and bubble wrap the thing. Like, I mean, when I die, okay, 500 years later, they open up the container. Look at all these, wow, these pieces of history in here. I'm thinking long term like that. So I want to keep my street bike, or turn it into a track bike. I can't afford another track bike at this point. And I don't really want to turn that one into a track bike because of the paint on it. Because if I downed it, I would be like, that's the fast speed snot machine, But I'd like to keep that bike as the daily runner until I can get a long range cruiser, like a highway bike. Okay, so I want a highway bike. But before I get the highway bike, I want a track bike. But I got to get the car first. So I'll get the car. I don't care, $500 beater, as long as there's no rust on it. I don't mind if it just needs parts replaced on it. Because when I get the car, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it jacked up, even if I have to pay somebody else to do it. I want you to, if there's any rust underneath it, bead blast it off. I don't care, get that rust off there. I'll do what I can, but if it has to be bead blasted off, bead blast it off. When it's done, I want to look at it, and then I'm going to say, okay, guys, mummify this thing. Do the gravel guard everywhere. I'm going to buy myself an oil spray gun, and I'll oil spray it every year after that. So if I can get 20 years out of this car, I'd be happy. Okay? If it needs brakes, tires, whatever, I don't care. As long as it's relatively mechanically sound, I'll tune it up. I got to work on my own stuff anyway because I can't pay anybody else. I'm too poor. But just keep this car running as long as possible. I wanted to do that. That van, the road rage van, my mom's last van, it's sitting over there, and it still mechanically runs well, but I got into it the other day, and I could feel the floor going. It's so rusted out, and that's the only reason why I had that thing taken off the road. I didn't want to put any money into it because it was done. But if it wasn't rusted out, I would still be driving that van because I would have replaced the windshield, would have done this, would have done that to it to just keep it running. Okay, now once I do that, once I got this vehicle, that out of the way, then I can start working on more motorcycle projects. So a track bike, which I could see, I want a 1,000cc track bike. Well, I mean, if you're going to go to a track even twice a year, that's fine for me. So I'm going to get a track bike, and I've seen an R1 for like $2,000. I'm sure it's not in the best condition, but let's say you get 10 track days out of it before you blow it up. For $2,000, I still think you did good. I mean. You'll never take that experience away from you. And then you rebuild it. If it takes you 2 years to rebuild it, whatever. Again, you're not a professional racer. You don't care. Then another daily rider. Like we're talking like 400cc, 75 miles a gallon, another LTD 440. Needs tires, brakes, stuff, consumables, new clutch cable, whatever, fork seals. Okay, do all that stuff to it. Put it on the road. The sport bike breaks down, doesn't matter. Jump on that bike. Fix the sport bike too, or take the, because one thing I would like to have is a second bike, or not a car, but a second bike, because like the Triumph, it's like I'm at that mileage where it's like I'm just approaching 35,000 kilometers on this bike, which is when you do the full service. But I don't want to take the bike off the road in the middle of end of June, early July. To do the full service, because that's my riding season, right? So pushing the bike to the end of the season, I don't want to do a full tune-up on the bike until October, October, November, when I'm going to put the bike away, So I'd like to have another bike so that when you have to do that, okay, this is the service time, I can pull this bike off the road, pull it all apart, have it in my shipping container, I'll have a little workspace. Okay, the bike, I need this part. Okay, well, it's going to take 3 weeks for the part to come in. I need to shim the valves. I need to buy a new cam chain. Whatever it's going to be. Take your time with it. Zero time it, put it back on the road, mechanically tip-top, run the piss out of it until you need to do it again. And then while that one's down, I can work on the other one, keep it in prestige, and then you can alternate them, right? And that's what I'm going to do. And then from there, I can work on project... two-wheel historical conservation. I don't know. Whatever BS I can come up with to justifying spending a whole bunch of money on bikes I don't need, but that bikes will people that will appreciate it sitting in a museum in 150 years' time saying, thank God that guy was willing to put that in. And that thing is not only period correct, but it's like 98% original. Ooh, you know what I mean? That's what I'm going for. So it's like this guy had a Vincent, he had an Indian Chief, an Indian Scout, an Indian 442. He had Triumph Bonneville. He had the Tiger. He had a Norton Calf Racer. He had a Norton Commando, Norton Fastback. Ooh. He had a 48 pan head, a 49 pan, a 57 pan head, a 61 pan head, a 65 pan head, and a 66 shovel head. Ooh. And then he had a Ducati 916. Then he had a 748. Now, mind you, I'm just going dream bikes. I'll never be able to afford all this, but you can see it's a nice goal to have, right? Then he had a BMW R25, an R35, an R69S, an R72, or an R60/5. Sorry, yeah, the 72 model. Ooh, and then to top it all off, a K model just to sit there so he could say that he was better than everybody else because he had a K model. I don't know, BMW. Yeah, and then just to freak everybody out, throw a Moto Guzzi right in the center of it. I don't matter. It doesn't matter what year. Why? Because what the hell is a Moto Guzzi anyway? Where do they come from? Where do they really go? Does anybody understand a Moto Guzzi? But I want one. Yeah, so, and then beside that, you put the 36 knucklehead. And beside that, you can put the WRL 45 flat tracker. Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, there's just, Vincent Black Shadow, and then to, but when you open the door, you're greeted with a Bruff Superior. Just, wow, wouldn't that be cool to have? So in other words, I think I'm talking about robbing Jay Leno. I think that's what I'm talking about. I'll have to call him, see if he's okay with that. I just want the bikes. I don't want to go to jail or anything. Think he'd be okay with it? Well, I'll have to ask, hey, Jay, can I steal some of your bikes? Because, you can't ride them. You're old anyway. I'll be helping him I'll be saving him from himself. This is the justification. I'll pick all the bikes. I'll tell him, okay, well, make sure he puts a lot of money into it too, because that way, it's everything's taken care of, because he's got the money. I don't know. So he gives me the bikes. I'll take care of them, but he can pay to take care of them for me. This is the best strategy ever, and I can have all these dream bikes. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah. If you've ever seen Jay Leno's Garage, man, like that's I think every gearhead's dream, whether it's cars or bikes or whatever. But you can see what he does. It's like he gets a bike. It's a marvelous machine. He rides it around, maybe puts 50 miles on it, maybe a couple of 100 miles on it. He does ride his machines. That's one thing that's cool. But then he just stores them, so it becomes a museum after time, right? And a lot of these motorhead type of gearhead type of museums, you see motorcycle museums, and that's what it was. It was just some guy that just started. They started off getting a bunch of Vespa. Yeah, I'd even put a Vespa scooter in there, like an old Vespa, just for the giggle factor of it, right? Because it's something unique, And I mean, look at scooters. The scooter craze is unbelievable. Like, no man would ride one. I've ridden a scooter before. They are kind of fun to put around a yard or something like that. But I don't know. After you've ridden a real motorcycles, get on a scooter. It's like you're I'll tell you the story again. A girl named Dorothy, really good looking girl. Used to live in the same building as her. She had her red hair. She was a model. She was pretty as anything. Great legs, let's just say that. And she had this little scooter. It was, I don't know, it was 50cc, whatever it was, maybe a 150. It was just a little tiny little scooter. I can't remember. I don't remember what it was. It was a white little scooter. It was $1.67 to fill it up. And she'd run all week to college and back on this thing. And I worked in the motorcycle shop, so her and I got along really good. She always thought my bikes was cool. She'd always be sitting on my Beamers or my Harley or whatever. She's always checking out my bikes and stuff like that. I take her for a ride every now and then. And one day she tells me, she says, Reg, she goes, I just took my scooter to this shop and had it tuned up, but I want a second opinion, just so, can you take it for a ride around the block just to make sure that everything was running good? And this is the first time I ever rode a scooter. I think so. I think it was the first time I ever rode. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I've ridden a moped before that, but this was the first time I rode a scooter, I think. And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I jump on this thing and a little two-stroke, right? Like that, just running the crap out of this thing. And I come to the first stop sign, and I'm like, okay, like this thing is definitely not like my Beamer or my other bikes. It definitely doesn't come off the line very fast. It feels like you are, but it's like you're taking off at the speed of smell, right? But it sounds like you're doing like 5 million miles an hour. And I hear this loud, angry rumbling sound behind me. And I look in this little round mirror that's shaking like this, and I just see it. It was this gigantic grill, chrome grill coming at me. And it was, if it wasn't 30 feet wide. I don't know what it was. It was basically a Lincoln Continental, the biggest automotive car I think ever built, next to limos, right? Lincoln Continental. And I swear the chrome grille started doing this. So I take off. And okay, so I hit about, the speed limit was 30, so I did what I could, This car's like tight. Like I swear, it seemed like he was that far from me. He probably wasn't that close, but it felt like, and I could hear his engine over mine, and I was just like, I can't get away from him. And it was just this gigantic grill coming at me right in the mirror, and I was so scared. I saw the first left, I just ditched. Okay, go. I nearly took the curb. I was terrified. This big freaking green Lincoln Continental goes by. I thought I was going to die. So I got off the bike. I'm shaking. I'm like, how do you ride this thing in traffic? I said, I had a Lincoln Continental bike. She goes, oh yeah, I got used to it. She says, I was scared at first, but then, I got scared at first, and then I just stopped looking in the mirror. I was like, because that way if it happens, you don't even know. You just don't. You don't even see it coming. You just make it as painless and humane as possible. Oh my god! But I was like, I'm never ever. I don't know how anybody could ride. And I've seen people on the Queensway with these things. They're illegal to be on the Queensway, but there's some people they just don't know, right? And there's just people that is like, I know, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And they're doing 60 kilometers. Maybe they don't cook the engine, going down the, it's just like. Insane. Maybe you do have to be extremely manly to drive the land. That's even Evel Knievel knew better, But yeah. So maybe we'll throw one of those in there. Why not, right? I'll call it Dorothy. I'll name it after her. Dorothy Scooter. Yeah. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. So I thought I'd open up this conversation. I thought it was a good conversation to have. Why not have it? So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, be true to yourself, be true to others, always do the right thing. Have yourselves a great day.